10 or 15 seconds here and we'll get going. All righty, well, let's begin. Good evening. My name is JD Ross. I'm Associate Dean of Admission here at Hamilton College, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Virtually Hamilton series. This event series is a great way for you to get to know the college and the things that make us unique. Tonight's session, Exploring Your Passions with our open curriculum, is no exception, as we're going to discuss Hamilton's open curriculum, our approach to academics, and how that really sets us apart in how we address your academic journey. Our goal for you tonight is for you to understand how the open curriculum works at Hamilton. We're going to share some examples. Our student panelists are going to chime in here in a few minutes and talk about how the open curriculum has given them a fair amount of flexibility to explore their passions across Hamilton's liberal arts offerings. At Hamilton, I think when you focus in on the exploring your passions part of our promise, can really also be described as discovering what you love. There's a lot to explore academically, and not because you have to, but because you want to. See, with our open curriculum, with very few exceptions, we don't have core courses, we don't have distribution requirements, we don't have first year or sophomore course sequences. You have the freedom to dive right into an academic topic if you know what you want, or the freedom to explore multiple academic areas of interest if you are really not sure how you want to approach your learning. We have a focus at this college on turning out effective communicators. We want you to be a compelling writer. We want you to be a confident public speaker. You're going to take 3 courses that are writing intensive during your time at Hamilton. Some of your classes will have some kind of an oral communications focus to it. And you're going to be asked to take 1 class that fulfills a quantitative and symbolic reasoning requirement. You may hear us call that the QSR requirement because that's a lot easier to say than quantitative and symbolic reasoning. But other than that, you're in control of your academic journey and in control of the classes that you take. And the nice thing about this is that at Hamilton, you're always going to be in class with students who want to be there because they made the deliberate choice to take that particular class. And we find in talking with our faculty that raises the level of engagement in the classroom, not only between students and the faculty member teaching the class, but also between the students in the class with each other. And how this all works and where we'll really kind of start to dive into this with our panelists in a minute is through our thoughtful and tiered system of academic advising. We realize that being responsible for your own academic journey is a little bit different than perhaps what you were used to in high school, where you had a lot of times your curriculum pretty well laid out for you. Maybe you didn't have a whole lot of choice in what you were taking. And so at Hamilton, you'll have a team of advisors that help provide a sounding board, help give you some direction, maybe give you a nudge outside of your comfort zone here or there. You'll also have an ALEX advisor that serves as kind of an umbrella advisor. ALEX is our Advise, Learn, and Experience program. That's what ALEX stands for, kind of a play on words for our founding father there. But your ALEX advisor helps you navigate a lot of the other options like off-campus study, studying abroad, fellowships, experiential learning, so that you can complement your classroom learning with opportunities outside of the classroom as well. That's enough of me talking here for a few minutes. I would really like to jump in to our panelists, have them share a little bit about themselves as I introduce them. So I'll just call you if you can give us your name, your hometown, your major, and minor if you've got one, what you do on campus, and one fun fact about yourself. So Reagan, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Reagan. I'm a rising senior here at Hamilton. I'm from Deadwood, South Dakota. I'm a Chinese and dance double major. Here on campus, I am captain of Heat, which is our hip hop dance group on campus. We perform at the football and basketball halftime shows. And a fun fact about me is that I know how to ride a motorcycle, but not a bicycle.
All right, thank you. Jade.
Hi, my name is Jade. I'm from Edgewood, New Mexico. I'm a rising sophomore, so just finished my first year at Hamilton. I'm planning on majoring in environmental studies, maybe a minor in like Spanish, anthropology, econ, one of those. And then on campus, I also work at the library. I'm a trivia host. I'm also an orientation leader. I do a bunch of little clubs here and there. And then additionally, fun fact about me, Reagan kind of took mine, but I also cannot ride a bike, but I also can't ride a motorcycle. So none of the above.
I
Yeah.
think maybe Reagan can teach you. So Thomas.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Kuhn. I'm from Yarmouth, Maine. I am going to be a junior this year, hence class of 24. I'm a government major and environmental studies minor. Might pick up philosophy or anthropology, kind of deciding between the two. Little preface, but it's really easy to minor and stuff at Hamilton, which is awesome. I'm like one class away in each, so kind of on the fence there. On campus, I'm involved with the Hamilton Democrats. I'm going to be the president next year. Super excited about that. Big election coming up. And men's club soccer, really fun. And a fun fact about me is that I lived in New Zealand for like 6 months when I was 10 years old.
So we've got to even this out. Can you ride a bicycle and or a motorcycle?
I can ride a bicycle, and I've rode a moped before, not a motorcycle.
Okay,
but
close.
kind of similar.
Maybe close. Okay.
Yeah, but I can bike, which is good.
Well, I thank the three of you for joining us tonight to share your experiences with our prospective students out here on the Zoom webinar. And you'll see our panelists really come from a wide variety of backgrounds and experiences and academic interests tonight. I've got one more person to introduce to you behind the scenes here. I'm really grateful that my colleague Ben Rose, Associate Dean of Admission, can hang out in the Zoom chat with you all tonight. If you've got some questions, Ben will be over there fielding them in the Zoom chat and answering them, and he might also elevate some of those questions over to us to be answered live as well. So say hi to Ben and thank him for joining us tonight. And let's get right into some questions that we've already got here for our student panelists. So when you're thinking about, rewinding in your head, Reagan, it's been longer for you than everybody else, but back to what it was like when you were seniors, juniors, rising seniors in high school and your college search process. How did your individual academic interests play a part in guiding that college search process for you?
Yeah, so honestly, when I was in high school, like I wasn't quite sure what I was interested in yet. Like when I was a kid, I was always asked like, "Oh, like what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not too sure." And so like in high school, I found myself like interested in like a lot of different things, and so that's kind of what guided my search process. I wasn't sure like exactly what I wanted to major in, and so the open curriculum at Hamilton was a big selling point for me, especially because I wanted to be able to go to a school where I'd be able to take a bunch of different classes and kind of explore all of those different interests that I've always had.
So thinking back 4 years ago, so been a little bit. But for me, it was very important to have a school with a small community where I could learn language, because for me, language is very important. Being able to learn Chinese is very important for me. So I wanted to have like a small community where I could definitely work on speaking the language, getting to know my classmates, being in a class where I can interact with other people in that classroom who also want to be there, as well as professors that are excited to be teaching those classes, be able to really form those personal relationships, practice the language not only in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom and office hours. So I really wanted that environment to have that realistic language learning experience, which was definitely something that I got at Hamilton.
It's a great answer. I was really looking for a kind of similar experience to high school in a way, with like small class sizes. I went to a really small public high school in Maine, so I was not really prepared to make the jump to a school of like 18,000 students. That would be kind of overwhelming for me. And Hamilton kind of checked the box for like class size. And I really like getting to know everyone that I'm around, kind of like Reagan was saying, like community is super important. And in general in life, I think community is really important. And Hamilton really offered that. And like kind of fosters better classes as well, because you're really familiar with the students that you're in your classes with. And that was definitely something that was really important to me.
So the open curriculum, really not something, not a topic that a lot of high school students are too familiar with until they start to maybe hear about it from colleges like Hamilton. You know, they see our emails, they see it on our website, they read it in our literature. But what was some of your first reactions when you discovered Hamilton's open curriculum? Was it, exciting, daunting, a little bit of a mix of both? What was it like for you?
I was really excited. Not much of a math student, and being able to avoid taking calculus and avoid taking chemistry ever again was definitely something that I was super excited about. And I kind of recognized that not being forced into taking like those kind of gen ed courses offers an additional opportunity to pursue what you're interested in. Yeah, so that was kind of my initial impulse when I read about the open curriculum.
Yeah, in a similar boat to Thomas, I definitely thought it was like too good to be true. And so I was like, what do you mean? Like there's an open curriculum. I can take classes that I want like as soon as freshman year. Like that's insane. And so I just thought I was just really excited about being able to like come here, see what I'm interested in and also what I'm not too interested in and realizing that's okay as well. And so I really do like that you're going to sign up for classes here and there are going to be a bunch of other students who also signed up for that class. So everyone loves to be there. And so um, open curriculum, when I first heard of it, I was like, that's so cool. So yeah.
I definitely came into college with a lot of different interests and I wanted to be able to pursue them all academically. And as a double major in Chinese and dance, not super similar, a little different. But being a double major, it was very important for me to be able to fully pursue both of those avenues to the extent that I really wanted academically, while also still being able to take classes in other departments as well was so important to me. You know, I didn't have to give up following my passion for psychology or history, and I'm still able to be a double major in dance and Chinese, you know, two topics that are very important to me. So definitely being able to have that academic freedom and pursue multiple things academically while still being able to pursue other passions and interests that I have, that was definitely something that was super exciting for me and something that, you know, made me really eager to start signing up for classes.
So now that in of course varying degrees here, like Jade, you've been here a couple of semesters, Reagan, you've been here a couple of few years now, but now that you've had a little bit of Hamilton experience under your belts, can you explain perhaps how the open curriculum has had an impact on the types of courses you've taken? And maybe is there an example of somehow that it has led you perhaps down a path that you might not have otherwise considered without that flexibility?
Back in my first year, I was taking a lot of very intense language courses, and I wanted to balance it out with a little bit more art. So I decided to take an intro theater course, which is something I didn't really have a lot of experience in. So I took that course and I absolutely loved it. It's not something that I ever thought that I would be super passionate about. I took it to, you know, give myself a good balance in my schedule, do a little bit more performing arts and try something new. And I ended up loving it so much. And I've definitely still stuck with it, you know, throughout my 3 years at Hamilton. Last semester, I took a playwriting course, and I had never written a play or thought about writing a play before in my life. But being able to, you know, try something new and find out that like I'm actually kind of decent at writing plays, but definitely being able to explore that, even though it isn't in either of my majors, still have that great experience and, you know, find maybe a secret hidden talent that I have. Definitely something that was a really good experience.
Yeah, honestly, like the open curriculum has just been so cool. Like I came to Hamilton and my first 4 courses I took, like I took a Chinese class, I took a computer science course, I took philosophy, econ, like just all during my first year. And so just being able to have that time for exploration and kind of seeing what I was interested in. I also learned that I'm definitely not interested in computer science, and I realized like that's totally okay. Like you're gonna come here, you're gonna try a bunch of things that maybe you don't like. And so it was just really good to be able to like find out more about myself and what I'm interested in academically. And so honestly, like after taking all these courses during my first year, like I realized maybe I don't like computer science, but I really do like economics. And so I think that's really interesting. And so honestly, like that's why I'm considering like either double majoring or minoring in econ. And so um, the open curriculum has definitely like really helped me kind of see more what I'm interested in and kind of let me explore that. So it was very nice.
Yeah, kind of similar to Jade. I mentioned I'm like very close to minoring in anthropology. That never would have happened without the open curriculum. Actually, my favorite class that I've taken at Hamilton was an anthro class that I took this past semester. It was on food justice in the Mohawk Valley, which for those of you that are unfamiliar with the area is where Hamilton is, where Clinton, New York is, which is where we go to school. And it was hands down the coolest course I've ever taken. It was a really small seminar. I got to know my professor really well. And like if I was stuck in a, again, calculus class that was required for me to graduate, I wouldn't have been able to actually pursue that interest of mine that I never really knew I had. So that's kind of my personal experience with it. There are definitely more stories than that, but Jade and Reagan have really kind of covered the most of it.
Yeah, great experiences, all of you. So thank you for sharing. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit and think back to your academic advisor and what that relationship was like. So all first year students are assigned an academic advisor that is also someone who is teaching one of their first semester classes. That's a kind of a deliberate pairing. This is somebody we want you to get to know pretty well, right? Not only seeing them, interacting with them as they teach that class a couple or 3 times a week, but also for some of those initial academic advising sessions. Can you all explain a little bit about what your experience was like with your academic advisor back when you were a first year student, and maybe how some of those advising sessions played out for you?
I'll start, but again, I'm probably not the best case study. I matriculated during COVID. It was a really different time than what it was this year, what it's going to be next year. So I never actually met my academic advisor in person until this year, until I took a constitutional law class with him. But we would meet over Zoom probably once a month and kind of check in on how we're doing. COVID's really stressful. It was really nice to have like an adult there to kind of like be a good mental health resource. I really appreciated that. And B, kind of talk about what I wanted from the open curriculum, what I wanted from a Hamilton education. And I wasn't sure about environmental studies. He really kind of pushed the boat out on me for that one. He was like, you got to pursue it. It's definitely up your alley. It's not completely sciencey. You will be fine. There's a lot of humanities in environmental studies. So that was super important to me. And we kind of mapped out like how to get through your first year, what courses you should take your second year, and like the potential for studying abroad, the potential for pursuing a foreign language. And I'm really grateful for my advisor. Yeah.
So my first year advisor, I matriculated right before COVID, so I did get a couple in-person meetings before everything went a little crazy. But definitely, I had such a great experience with my first year advisor. I took a lot of charge when it came to registering for classes. I kind of came into my advising meetings and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to take XYZ classes. This is my schedule. I have it already down. So a lot of our advising meetings ended up just being her telling me, different options I could take, or making sure that I was filling requirements rather than her kind of helping me choose classes because I already had it kind of down. I get really excited whenever like the course listings for the next semester come out. I spend hours looking through the courses for every single department, not just departments that I'm interested in. Every single department I look at the courses. So I always went in and I was like, here are my classes. This is what I want to take. So it was very much kind of just talking with her about, classes I had already taken, classes I'm going to be taking, making sure I have all of my requirements down. And also her office was in a super accessible place too. So I would just kind of like stop in and say hi all the time. We didn't do a lot of like scheduled meetings. It was kind of more about I just walk in and say hello and then we chat kind of deal. So a little bit more informal, but also such a great mentor that I've had at my time at Hamilton.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience to Reagan in that I had a very informal relationship with my academic advisor. And so I am also very excited when the course catalog comes out. And so I comb through that. I'm looking through all the classes that I might want to take. And so I took a lot of charge when it came to picking my classes. Like I had my exact schedule. And so it would more just end up being me like sending him a quick email being like, these are the classes I'm going to take. And then he always asks like, why do you want to take this class? Just to make sure you're taking it for the right reasons. And so my academic advisor, amazing man. And so we just meet and he just makes sure I like all my classes. And then like it was just a very informal thing, but I kind of like that anytime, like I could drop by his office, I could shoot him a quick email, be like, hey, I'm thinking of this course. Like, have you heard anything about it? Or do you think this is like the right path for me to go down and stuff like that? And so, yeah, our meetings were very informal, but he was a great resource my first year for sure.
So, outside of the formal advising relationship that exists between you and your first year advisor, you and your major advisor, are there other ways that you have worked with faculty to explore your interests, maybe finding research opportunities, or maybe even just discussing possible courses to take?
Honestly, oh, sorry, Thomas. Do you want? Okay, I can go first. Honestly, I have not had the opportunity to participate in research yet. This summer, I'm working at the admissions office as a tour guide, but I do want to do research in the future, specifically in like environmental studies or geosciences. So I haven't done that yet, but however, like I made a really close relationship with my environmental studies professor this past year, and so he was teaching my nature and technology course. It was a level 200 environmental studies course. And then I also realized he was teaching this other class that I thought sounded super interesting, but it was also like a requirement for the environmental studies major. And so I sat down and I was like, hey, like, what is your course going to look like? I just wanted to know if I was interested in the kind of topics that you would be covering in there. And so he sat down with me, he talked to me about his course, and then I ended up actually taking that and adding a fifth course just because it sounded really interesting. And he talked me through it, made sure that it was going to be a class where I would fully be engaged. And so that was definitely like my professor was a great resource for me, and he like showed me this new opportunity. And so I took his environmental ethics class, and I ended up really loving it. And so that's kind of my working with faculty story, I guess.
Thank you.
I also, like Jade, have not done research yet. I'm hoping to do some next summer maybe. But I actually utilized like my relationship I made with the professor to kind of find a fellowship. I'm kind of a political junkie. I like to talk politics with all of my professors, but I've had one professor every semester at Hamilton, Professor Winkleman. If you come here, I really recommend taking a course with him. He's really cool, very into tarot cards, which is awesome. But I was talking with him, and this was a really kind of tumultuous spring for politics, and I really wanted to get involved. And we had like an hour-long discussion one night, and he recommended me reaching out to one of his kind of like friends slash associates who was running a campaign in New York City. I don't know how many of you guys are from Manhattan. It's a very popular demographic at Hamilton. So statistically speaking, probably one or two of you are here, but Congresswoman Maloney is running for re-election in New York's 12th congressional district. And I kind of found that opportunity through my professor. I'm from Maine. I go to school in upstate New York. There's no real connection with New York City for me, but because of Professor Winkleman, I was able to find a really good fellowship and kind of be involved in the political scene in a place where I was really unfamiliar. And it's been really lovely. It's been a really cool opportunity. So that's kind of my experience with faculty outside of advising.
Last semester, I took a super cool course on Tang Dynasty history and art. And first off, just an absolutely amazing course. I absolutely loved it. But for our final project, we were allowed to do pretty much whatever we want. We just had to do a large research project and present our research. And so I went up to my Tang Dynasty history professor and I said, I want to find a way to combine Tang Dynasty history and dance. And he said, okay, I trust you. So I went around, I talked to, different members of the Chinese faculty. I talked to my professor for this course. I talked to members of the dance faculty, and, using a lot of their advice, a lot of their knowledge, I was able to create this really awesome final project where I used different dance analysis procedures and strategies to analyze different artwork found in murals from the Tang Dynasty to come up with a thesis on, the historical view of women into the Tang Dynasty. So that was a really cool project that I was only able to do because my professors really helped me. Even, professors in the dance department that kind of had no idea about this class or had never met this professor, they were so willing to help and willing to, help me look through all of these pictures of murals from the Tang Dynasty and figure out how to make this really awesome project work. So that was definitely, one of my highlights at Hamilton, being able to really pursue an interdisciplinary approach to a project. And that was only possible because of my professors being so amazing, so flexible, and just fantastic advisors and mentors.
Yeah, that's a great story about the encouragement that you got there, just from faculty from all sides That's great. If you remember back during my intro, I briefly discussed the writing intensive courses and Hamilton's focus on communications. Wondering if you could think back to the courses that you've taken that to fulfill the writing intensive requirement, and what was it about it that made you select those particular courses?
So I took a Chinese history course in my first year that was writing intensive. I took it because I've just always been interested in Chinese history, and I was like, okay, let's go. I want to write a lot of papers about it, do a lot of research. So definitely that class was a really awesome course to take, and overall, I just really enjoyed it. I also took a writing intensive. Oh, I'm forgetting the other one in philosophy. I took a critical thinking course, which was a super fun course to take. We just looked at different political issues, and then we were able to critically, analyze them and write papers on our analysis. And then I also took a writing intensive on the history of dance, which was really awesome to be able to, analyze different parts of dance history. I wrote a really cool paper for my final paper about analyzing kind of the fetishization of female ballet dancers in history. So that was definitely a really cool approach to take, and a really interesting paper to write. I never really thought I'd get a chance to, work on my writing skills so in depth in the world of dance.
Yeah, in terms of writing intensive courses, during my first year fall, I took Introduction to Women and Gender Studies as a writing intensive. And so that was a great class. We learned how to write like a policy memo, and we did write like big papers as well. And so I'd always been interested in like feminist theory and feminist thought. And so that's kind of why I signed up to take that class. And then in my second semester, I ended up taking Hispanic Studies 200. And so that's a writing intensive course. You write a bunch of essays in Spanish. And so I was just interested in kind of like honing my Spanish skills, continuing in that department. And so I had a great time in that class. And then lastly, I also took Introduction to Political Theory. It's a government class at Hamilton, but it was a really great class. Honestly, like I learned so much more about writing, and especially writing about politics and a lot of philosophy. But also I was able to like introduce like environmental studies to that. And so my final paper was about environmental studies, authoritarianism in the time of the climate crisis. And so I was really able to relate that class back to um, like what I'm really interested in, which is environmental studies. And so that was a great class, but that's also kind of why I selected it, because I knew that the professor had like his degree, especially in environmental policy. And so that's kind of what led me to choose that class, but it was a great class. And so that's my writing intensives.
I kind of similarly to Jade, I've taken Intro to Political Theory, really great class. It was writing intensive, it was really fun. I had a new professor last year, Professor Gorham, and we watched like a lot of film as part of that course. So it was interesting kind of dissecting like Machiavelli and then like Fight Club, and utilizing that for a paper. That was a really interesting exercise, and one that I was very unfamiliar with, but that was a really cool class that I took. I also took Introduction to Comparative Politics my freshman year, and that was really helpful. I wasn't really familiar with how to write academically my first semester on campus, so that course kind of helped that transition to Hamilton and like to the government department specifically, because there's kind of a way you're supposed to write. And like I didn't use Chicago citation style in high school, so that was completely new to me. But those were the two that I took in the government department, and my food justice class was also a writing intensive course. So that was enjoyable as well.
And one theme you might see here is that I don't think that any of these classes were in the English department or the creative writing department for you, right? And so we pepper these writing intensive classes throughout the curriculum. The idea here is to really meet you where your interests are in terms of fulfilling these writing intensive requirements. I've got one follow-on question for you that comes from our audience. Interesting, and I think it fits in really well here. Do you think that the open curriculum has helped your ability to communicate? And if so, do you have an example, or in what way?
I definitely do. Being able to write in different like styles and techniques is super important. Like government writing is pretty formal, pretty like kind of straight to the point, and that's a super valuable skill to have. But also being able to take English classes, philosophy classes, anthropology classes, it really broadens your like writing ability and kind of opens different avenues for you. And I've definitely enjoyed that aspect of it, and definitely have improved as a writer because of the different like exercises your brain's going through for each course.
Great, thank you. Let's stick with this topic for a second, and so becoming a better writer and communicator and the resources on campus. So we have the Writing Center, we have the Oral Communication Center, we have for the quantitative and symbolic reasoning classes, the QSR Center, and there's a few other resources on campus. Can you all talk about your experience with these academic resource centers, the Writing Center, the Oral Communication Center, and how they have helped you through this process?
I've definitely been to both the Writing Center and the Oral Communication Center, and they're so extremely helpful. But I also kind of want to shine a light on one of my favorite centers, which is the Language Center. They're a really great academic resource center. I love the Language Center so much. They have some amazing tutors there that are either native speakers in the target language or more advanced speakers, and it's just a really great place to go to. So if you feel like you might be, falling behind in a class, you can schedule recurring tutoring sessions, which has been so helpful, for some of these really high-level Chinese classes I've been taking. There's a lot of vocab, and I just needed, some extra time to practice, some extra, conversation time. So being able to schedule, recurring tutoring sessions has been so helpful for me. And you can also just schedule a single one-time session if you miss a course. A lot of times it's easy to fall behind in language classes because they just move so quickly. So if I ever have to miss a class because of sickness or travel or anything, it's so great to, be able to schedule an appointment with a tutor who has also talked to the professor of that class to be able to catch up on whatever I might have missed. So I absolutely love the Language Center. The Writing Center is also super helpful, fantastic writers that are also students at Hamilton. So being able to, have that writing tutor that's also not super scary because, like they're your peer, they're here to help you and guide you, has definitely been a great experience.
Yeah, I have utilized the Writing Center during my first year, and honestly, that was a big help when I was writing my big term paper for the end of the year. And so they definitely give you the best like suggestions and feedback about how to strengthen your paper and kind of be able to more clearly like articulate your thoughts and what you kind of want to convey in that paper. And so that has been really useful. Another thing that I would like to give a shout out to though is teaching assistants in your classes. And so every class, you're probably going to get a teaching assistant. It's going to be an upperclassman student who already took that class. And so the professor asked them to be a teaching assistant. They don't teach any classes, but they have open hours. And so like I'd always go to like my econ TA's open hours every single week, Tuesdays in KJ 204 at 8:30 p.m. And so he'd always walk us through like the problem sets, go over it. If we have any questions, he'd answer them. And so that was a great resource for me my first year for sure.
Yeah, you guys kind of covered it all. I have had a little bit of experience with the Oral Communication Center. I took a constitutional law class this past semester, and a big part of our grade, and just like a big part of the course, was a moot court presentation. We would choose historical cases that were constitutionally significant, and we would re-argue them. And that's really scary. It was one of the bigger classes I've had at Hamilton. It's like 18 students, which might not sound big, but I've kind of grown accustomed to the smaller class sizes. So that was like kind of intimidating. And it was really helpful going to the Oral Communication Center like the week before I was supposed to present and being able to kind of practice my argument for the case that I was arguing.
Great. So, and this is probably more for Reagan and Thomas, as you are at the point where you've declared your majors already. But can you walk through what that process was like for you? Like was there like an aha moment when you said, "This is what I'm going to do"? And what was the after you declared? What was the how did you decide to pick your major advisor, and how did that relationship with your advisor change once you selected a major or an advisor from your major area of study?
Yeah, so I came into Hamilton kind of knowing that I wanted to be a Chinese major. And I told myself, I'm just going to do dance, extracurricularly. I'm just going to join a club, maybe take a couple classes, and then I accidentally majored in dance. But to be honest, I just ended up taking so many dance classes, and I was like, I am 2 classes away from doing the major. I'm just going to do the major. So that was kind of an accidental major, to be honest. You'll find that like a lot of students accidentally major or minor in things just because you end up getting enough credits with the open curriculum. But definitely, I think it was last year, I realized I was so close to, completing that dance major. I had so many friends that were dance majors, and whenever they were talking about their theses, I was like, I want to do one. That sounds like so much fun. And I was like, I'm already there. So I decided to kind of add dance on since I had already almost completed it. But Chinese has definitely been something I've been passionate about since before college, and I knew when I came to Hamilton, like that was what I wanted to pursue. Being able to, choose my advisor in those departments was very important to me. One thing that I really liked is that your permanent advisor you get in your major department is not the first advisor you'll have at Hamilton. So that gave me a good year and a half to get to know all of the Chinese faculty members. I got to, talk with all of them, learn about their specialties, learn about what classes they teach. And I got to figure out, which member of this department really kind of resonated with me. Like, who did I connect with? Who did I have a really good connection with? And then my issue came because they're all amazing and I loved them all. But eventually I was like, yes, this person has to be my advisor. We have similar interests. She is studying something that I think is so interesting. Definitely, this is the person that's going to be my advisor. So being able to get to know, your academic advisors before you kind of declare them permanently, that was a really good experience for me and helped me kind of figure out, which advisor I felt would kind of stick with me and understand me the best.
You really covered that. That was a comprehensive answer. I'd say a thing that's a bit different is I was really sure I wanted to major in political science. Hamilton doesn't really have political science. The government major, like the political science major itself, is kind of divvied up into subsects. There's world politics, there's public policy, which is kind of a hybrid of government and a little bit of philosophy and economics. And then there's just like straight government, which is like American government. And that's what I'm doing. And it kind of took me to take a comparative politics class, take an IR class my freshman year and be like, okay, this is really fascinating, but this isn't what I love. This isn't what I'm super interested in. And when I took like my American political thought class, my sophomore fall, I was completely sure that I wanted to be like a straight gov major. So that was definitely my aha moment within the government department. And choosing my advisor, I wanted someone who was familiar with environmental studies. So I kind of looked at the faculty like list that's available online. I'd met almost every professor just kind of in passing or through like email correspondence throughout the years. And I stumbled upon Peter Canova, who is the chair of the government department. And he's also a professor for upper level environmental study courses. And I was like, oh, this is the aha moment. This is perfect. I really want to work with him. And he's been really excellent over the past 7 months since like February, 6 months since February. Yeah, that was my experience.
Great. Thank you. And soon to be you too, Jade, as you get ready to declare here in a few months. We spent a lot of time kind of talking high level around the open curriculum and everybody's experiences. But I know, and especially from the prospective student point of view, they want to learn a little bit more about kind of the nuts and bolts around what is the college experience like academically. So can you talk a little bit, all of you, about your course schedules during a typical semester, how many classes you're taking, how often they're meeting, how, and it's different for all of you across the different majors, but labs versus lectures versus sections and how that all kind of comes together.
Yeah, so my first year I took 9 classes. So freshman fall I took 4, and then this past spring I took 5. Definitely not something I'd recommend your first year. I was definitely very ambitious, but I decided to add a 5th class just because I really wanted to take that environmental ethics course. And so normally though, I think I'm gonna stick to like the 4 and 4 plan. But that's how many I took this past year. Normally classes at Hamilton, they're gonna meet 3 times a week for 50 minutes, 2 times a week for an hour and 15, or once a week for 3 hours. So that's the typical time frame. For computer science, I did have a lab for about 2 hours a week. And so labs will depend based on the science class you're in. When you're in upper level science courses, I think the labs are maybe an hour longer, but nothing really past that. And so that's kind of what my schedule looked like and how the courses are here. So.
I really like to have my Fridays free, and I'm lucky that a lot of the government department courses are offered on Tuesday and Thursday. So I kind of base my schedule around that. And I also really like the feeling of a seminar course. I kind of figured that out early on during my time at Hamilton as well. So I've tried to get one seminar, which is normally a 3-hour class that meets once a week, kind of in the afternoonish as well, which is nice. Like 1 to 4 is a pretty common slot for that kind of course into my schedule. So I normally have like 3 classes Tuesday and Thursday, starting at like 8, finishing at like 4. So I have enough time to like work out, go for a walk, have lunch, do everything that I need to do during the day, and then have a seminar on Monday or Wednesday, and like have a PE class in there once in a while as well. So that's important.
For some of the lower level or more intro level language classes, you can meet up to 5 times a week. So for my Chinese 110 through 140 classes, we met 5 times a week. We went Monday through Thursday for 50 minutes. And then on Fridays, we had small groups. So usually 2 students, 1 professor for about half an hour. So that's kind of been one of my only variations from the typical like 2 150 or 115 to 3 50-minute schedule that you'd see. For dance classes as well, that can change a little bit. For a couple ballet classes I've taken, they've had that classes have been an hour and a half 3 times a week. But then if you have maybe extra time in class like that, then the homework assignments will be a little bit lighter. So for ballet classes, we would have, less readings and then more in studio practice. So those have kind of been deviations that I've experienced at Hamilton.
A little earlier, I know Thomas was talking. He was freaked out because his class had 18 people in it, and that was a lot of people. So Jade and Reagan, what typically have the class sizes been like for some of your classes so far?
Honestly, I took intro computer science, and so a lot more of the STEM courses here you'll find will be bigger, like lecture-based classes, because don't really know how you're going to have a whole class discussion about coding. But so that class was a lot bigger. That was 40 students. That's definitely the biggest class I've ever had at Hamilton. But my intro political theory class, it had, I believe there's 14 of us. And so my Spanish class, Spanish 200, had about 10. And so that's kind of my typical class size. If I could average them all together, I'd say normally I'm in a class of about 15 students, give or take. And so I really like that, though. You really get that chance to get to know your professors and the other students. And so we really create that community in our classrooms.
For some of the intro level courses, I know I took like an intro psych class that was 40 students. So for some intro courses, there will be classes that are 40, but most of my classes are like 12, honestly, around that 12 area. It's only those like intro classes that you will find those really big class sizes. And even if they do have really big class sizes like 40, then usually there will be 1 or 2 even professors, as well as 1, 2. I had 3 TAs for one of my courses once, and they would have, you have your professor's office hours, you have your TA's open hours. So even though it was a bigger course, there was extra support as well to help manage that and make sure that every student was still able to get that one-on-one attention. But I have not had a 40-person class in multiple years.
Great, nice to hear. So can you, thinking back to the courses that you've taken here over the years, is there one that stands out as like the most fun, or maybe the one that you were most surprised by, and what was it about that course that made it so?
I loved my American political thought class. It was really cool to like read American political theorists that I'd heard about my entire life, like W.B. Du Bois. I don't know if I'm probably butchering that last name. I'm terrible at French. I apologize. But that was a really great class, and interacting with that literature was wonderful, and kind of hearing the ideas of so many influential thinkers of the 19th and 20th century was really, really wonderful. And I didn't think that I was going to love it as much as I did, but that's kind of like dominated my reading list. It's just like the works of like Hannah Arendt, W.B. Du Bois. really influential on me at least. So definitely a surprise.
Yeah. My first year, I kind of already told the story a little bit, but I took environmental ethics, and so that's a philosophy course here, but it's course about the environment. But I did meet with that professor before I decided to add that as my fifth course, just because in high school I hated philosophy. Like I told my philosophy teacher my senior year, I was like, you know, this was a great class. I really appreciate everything you did for the class, but I don't think I'll like ever explore philosophy again. And so when this course like came up on my radar, it was taught by a professor that I loved. I was like a little bit apprehensive, but of course I sat down. I like heard about the course material and I was like, you know what, like maybe I'll give it another shot. And so like I took that class. I absolutely loved it. He baked us cookies. He's an amazing professor. And so it definitely surprised me that like I was able to like retry philosophy and it was a lot more contemporary, a lot more interesting. And so now I'm no longer a philosophy hater.
Last semester, I took a Chinese language through film course, and I was kind of dreading it. I'm not a movie person. I don't have the attention span to sit through movies. So I was like, oh no, we're going to have to watch movies, and it's in Chinese. So I don't know. I was really nervous, and I was looking through the syllabus, and I was like, there's so many movies to watch. There's so much happening. And then I actually ended up loving that class so much. And it might be cheating because I'm already, you know, I love Chinese. But I don't like movies that much just as a person. I don't have the attention span for it, but I ended up having so much fun, and I ended up, you know, really appreciating a lot of these movies because our professor did such a great job of, you know, tying it to real world issues, especially real world issues in mainland China, and then being able to discuss those issues in Mandarin Chinese with classmates, with the professor. It was such a great hands-on approach and actually made me start to enjoy movies a lot more, to look at it through that lens, which is not really an appreciation I was expecting to find in the Chinese language department. And I absolutely loved it. I loved taking that class. And even though looking at it, I was terrified of the syllabus, I ended up having so much fun. And I'm excited to take more Chinese film courses.
Sounds like it was pretty much a good experience all around there. So, you know, we've talked about the small class sizes. Obviously, it means a smaller student faculty ratio and really a lot of opportunities for getting to know your professors. In Jade's case, getting your professors to bake cookies for you, apparently. But right, cookies aside, how have you used like formal office hours for faculty, and how approachable have you found them to be? And generally, either in or outside of those office hours.
Okay, this is my time to geek out about the faculty here. So my first year, I did take Intro Chinese, and so that was definitely a very intense course. I bet Reagan can also speak to that, but it's just a lot. And so I was definitely struggling, falling behind a little bit, and my professor was like, hey, like, let's sit down, let's talk about this, like come to my office hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm in trouble. But we ended up sitting down. She was like, I noticed you're struggling a lot, like we need to talk about this. And so we like made a plan together. And so just the fact that she noticed in class and she cared so much about my success in her course just like was so like heartwarming to me. I chose not to just like continue in Chinese, but that was like kind of when I realized that Hamilton faculty is really here to support you as well in whatever you want to do. And so even though I kind of broke her heart and I chose not to continue in the Chinese department, she was like so understanding and kind and showed me so much like patience throughout that class. And so definitely went to her office hours a lot. She'd give us candy. And then my other professor, the one that baked us cookies, I sat down in his office hours. Of course, I met with him about adding his other class to my schedule, but we ended up becoming such a close bond. He taught a 40-person class, and so I guess that kind of speaks to even in the 40-person class, you're going to create those connections. And so this past week, I was actually watching his chickens over the summer, and so you really find a great community at Hamilton, even amongst the faculty for sure.
Back during my first year, it was the start of one of the academic breaks. I believe was Thanksgiving break, and all of my friends were going home, but I wasn't able to go home because, you know, South Dakota is a little far away, and most of my friends are from New York City. So I was a little bit sad, you know, hearing everyone talk about how excited they were to go home, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to be homesick alone on campus. It's okay. And one of my professors overheard me talking about this with one of my classmates, and she came up to us and she was like, you know what? we're going to go out for donuts. So during this break, she took time out of her day, you know, out of her break that she could have spent, you know, spending time with her family to make me feel more welcome at Hamilton, to really make me feel at home. And I was like, you could have spent your break, you know, with your family, enjoying, relaxing, doing anything but this. And you really took the time to take me and one of my classmates that's also super homesick to go out and get donuts. I wasn't even doing very well in that class. Like I eventually did turn it around. I went to office hours like every single week, but I was struggling a little bit, and she still really cared enough to even get to know me on a personal level, even though I was like, oh, for shame on myself. But definitely, you know, having that personal relationship, having her really reach out and initiate something that made me feel so at home here was such an important experience for me.
A wonderful story that like kind of warms my heart. Love that. So one of my first professors, going to college is scary. It's sad leaving your family behind. It's weird being in a new place, different people. I've lived in a small town basically my entire life, so it was a big transition. And I like went to one of my first professor's office hours, and I started crying on Zoom just because I was really overwhelmed. It's a big transition. And he was just like, okay, talk to me about something you love. I'm a big soccer fan, big footy fan, and I'm a huge Arsenal fan. It's a big club in England based in North London. And we talked about that instead of talking about like a paper that I didn't do very well on for an hour. And then he's like, come back to me tomorrow and we'll work on your paper. We'll revise. It's all going to be okay. Don't be too overwhelmed. And I did. I was able to like bump up my grade, which is great. And now we have like an ongoing email chain about the success of Arsenal. He's a Tottenham fan. For those of you who are unfamiliar, it's like the biggest rivalry in North London between soccer teams. There are a lot of soccer teams in North London as well, important context, but being able to kind of like have that relationship in more than just a academic sense, but really like he kind of viewed me as like an 18-year-old boy that was struggling, and he like reached out to me, connected with me in a way that was really profound, and I'll forever be appreciative for that.
Nice personal stories, personal connection stories there all around from the three of you. And really appreciate you sharing that tonight. I want to jump to a couple of questions that have come in here from our participants out in Zoom land, as we're kind of running short on time. But let's see here. This is a good one. Are there any parts of the open curriculum that can be particularly hard?
Honestly, like when you come to Hamilton, when you look at the course catalog, you're gonna look through and be like, oh my gosh, like I want to take that class. Oh, I want to take that class. And I think the open curriculum is so awesome in the fact that you get to like explore everything that you're interested in. But at the same time, occasionally I feel like there's not enough time here at Hamilton for me to take every single class that like to me just sounds so interesting. But of course, that's a much better problem to have than the opposite. And so of course, prioritizing whatever you think you're most interested in, but sometimes I just want to take every cool class that there is out there.
As a rising senior, I will say the hardest part of the open curriculum is knowing that I'm graduating next year and I will no longer have it. So definitely I feel Jade. It's hard knowing that I only have 2 semesters left. I only have 8 classes left that I can take in the open curriculum. So it's kind of like I feel very spoiled because I've had so many opportunities to take classes literally just because they sound cool. And then I'm not going to be able to have, you know, that same academic freedom once I graduate. So I really do think that, you know, leaving, as getting emotional as a senior, I'm allowed to, leaving and, you know, not being able to have so much freedom, because Hamilton is really, it's a place where you have so much support that enables you to have that academic freedom to bounce around, to try new things, all in such a supportive kind of have to leave that environment. A little sad.
Yeah, kind of similarly. I'm studying abroad in the spring, really excited about that. And there's certain government classes that are only offered every 2 years. And I'm not going to be able to like take those classes that are being offered this spring. And I'm really bummed about that. So that's a shame. But that's like my biggest complaint about the open curriculum. It is admittedly very lovely. It's done a good job.
Here's one more from the audience that I think may be good to think about for a second, but and maybe there's more than one, but I would just concentrate on one at this point in time. But is there a skill or a quality that you see that you've developed here during your time at Hamilton, maybe thanks to the open curriculum, or that you can thank the open curriculum for, that you think you're going to kind of carry with you um, into the next phase of your life? And maybe that part of the question is more for Reagan as a rising senior than Thomas and Jade, but anything that comes to mind?
I think for me, one really big quality that I've learned from the open curriculum, other than an abnormal amount of knowledge on Tang Dynasty art, is, being able to really take advantage of everything that's given to you, being able to really take charge and have that kind of academic freedom, academic agency, being able to, see something that you're interested in and have the courage to go for it. Because, enrolling in a class is that you don't have a lot of experience in is scary, but it's not nearly as scary as, maybe when I'm no longer at Hamilton in a year, being able to still pursue something, even if I don't have experience in it. So I feel like I'm definitely walking away from Hamilton with confidence. I feel like that's kind of a big quality that I've gotten from the open curriculum is confidence.
Public speaking. 3 years ago, if you told me today that I'd be on a webinar talking to 87 prospective students at Hamilton College, I would have said you're crazy. But just kind of through coursework, through the focus on like discussion within class, on like presentations, I feel like I've become a pretty good public speaker. I'm a tour guide here, so hopefully I'm all right at public speaking. But I would definitely say through my time at Hamilton, whether it's academically or with clubs that I'm involved with, kind of vocalizing my ideas and communicating my ideas has been really kind of paramount to my experience.
Yeah, honestly, since I haven't been here that long, I can't really speak to as much as like Reagan or Thomas, but I think that just throughout my first year, I've definitely noticed that through the open curriculum, I realized it's definitely okay to take a class and realize that you're just not interested in that subject. And that's like totally fine. Like you don't have to take a class, love every single class here, even though you probably will just because it's super cool. But like coding, I thought like, hey, like, let me try this. I've never tried it before. And so I tried it, ended up not liking it. And I learned that that's totally okay. And like, you're gonna like have things in life where it's like, oh, like, let me just try this. And so it's important to try new things, but it's also okay if you're not good at it right away, if you don't love it. And so that's probably what I've learned throughout my first year for sure.
Right. Well, we are just about out of time. So this is kind of like a lightning round here. So maybe 15, 30 seconds each on this question. So what is one piece of advice for our rising seniors out in the audience as they get ready to start applying to colleges here in a few weeks? Go.
Be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself. If you enjoy something, say you enjoy it. Don't be ashamed about the things you enjoy, and don't think that anything about you is mundane or average, because every single piece of you, even something that you think is average, it all comes together to make the unique and beautiful mosaic that is yourself. So do not be afraid to just full send yourself.
Nice.
That was really good, Reagan. Honestly, to rising seniors, I'd say definitely enjoy your senior year. Like you're getting ready to apply to college, and that's definitely a big process. But you only get one senior year. This is going to be like the last year that you're going to see the peers in your classes. And so just like trust the process. You're going to end up where you're meant to be. And even if one door closes, another one will always open. And so definitely take the time to just enjoy like your senior year.
Yeah, exactly. Trust the process. It all works out. College is like, I kind of say this at the end of every tour. I say the college application process is fun. You're getting to choose where you want to spend the next 4 years of your life, where you'll grow up a lot, where you'll have a lot of fun, where you'll make mistakes, where you'll really succeed. It's a good time. It doesn't need to be super stressful.
All right. Thank you, the three of you, for joining us tonight and imparting your wisdom, knowledge of the open curriculum, sharing some advice to the prospective students. I really appreciate it. But to my audience, thank you for attending. I want to let you know that there are more virtually Hamilton sessions coming up this summer and fall on student life, career networking, and advising, tips for the college essay process, Hamilton's financial aid approach. Go to hamilton.edu/visit. I think Ben just dropped that link into the chat, but go to hamilton.edu/visit to sign up for those virtually Hamilton sessions and join me and my colleagues at those as well. So thank you all again for spending a bit of your evening with us. It was a pleasure sharing information about Hamilton's open curriculum, and I wish you a good rest of your day. Bye-bye now.